You know what's crazy? This phone nails the basics so well and then goes a step further that there's honestly very little to complain about. For the past few years, iPhone launches have been about chasing something new. New camera tricks, new materials, new buzzwords, and every year the conversation turns into what Apple didn't do. Well, this year it feels a little bit different. The iPhone 17 isn't trying to reinvent anything. It feels like Apple finally decided to stop chasing the headlines and just refine the experience people actually live with every single day. And when a phone is this mature, these small details start to matter more than big features. Now, using the iPhone 17 day to day feels almost invisible. And I mean that in the best way possible. Nothing really gets in your way, apps open instantly, animations feel smooth without calling attention to themselves, and every interaction feels predictable and reliable. This is one of those phones where you stop thinking about the phone itself and just get on with your day. Whether that's replying to messages, shooting quick photos, navigating around, or bouncing between a dozen apps at once, it doesn't surprise you, it doesn't frustrate you. It just works consistently. And that feeling carries straight into the battery life. I've been using the iPhone 17 on iOS 26.2, and the best way that I can describe it is this. It's been just enough. And that's actually a good thing. On a full day of real use, I'm averaging around 6.5 hours of screen on time and consistently making it from morning to night without having to stress about finding a charger. Not with aggressive battery savings and not by avoiding certain apps, just normal everyday usage. My day usually starts early, checking messages, email, and social apps the first thing in the morning. Throughout the day, I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Slack, Safari, and I use the camera for quick photos and clips. I use navigation when I'm out and about, and a decent amount of background activity running constantly. This isn't a per se light scenario, but it's also not some extreme stress test. I would argue it's exactly how most people use their phones. And in that context, the iPhone 17 holds up reliably. Now, what's interesting is that the battery doesn't always feel impressive in a flashy way. You're not ending the day with 40% left and thinking about it. Instead, you end the day right around where you'd expect. Low teens, sometimes single digits, but never to a point where you felt anxious earlier in the day. And that's really the theme of this phone. It's not trying to wow you with the headline numbers. It's trying to be predictable, and that predictability is what makes it good. On iOS 26.2 specifically, the battery behavior has been consistent. Standby drain has been minimal for me, especially overnight. I'm not seeing those random drops that sometimes happens on earlier software builds, and background usage feels well managed. Apple's efficiency work here doesn't show up as a big talking point, but it shows up in how stable the experience feels. You use the phone normally and the battery drains normally. No surprises. 6.5 hours of screen on time might not sound insane compared to some Android phones out there pushing higher numbers, but context does matter. This is screen time spread across an entire day, not compressed into a single binge session. The phone is constantly waking up, syncing, running background tasks, and handling notifications. And to my surprise, it still gets through a full day without compromise. That's the kind of battery life that matters more than chasing big numbers on a spec sheet. Now, charging, while not revolutionary, fits the same philosophy. You plug it in when you need to, it charges at a reasonable pace, and you move on. There's nothing here that changes your habits, and honestly, that's kind of the point. The iPhone 17 doesn't demand that you think about the battery management. It just fits into your routine. So no, this isn't the phone you buy because you want 2-day battery life or because you're chasing records. But if your expectations are simple, you wake up, you use your phone freely, and you make it to bedtime without worrying, the iPhone 17 delivers that consistently. And in daily use, that quiet reliability ends up being far more valuable than a spec that looks good on paper. Alright, so speaking of actually living with this phone every day, I want to put you guys on to the Moft trackable wallet stand. I didn't realize how stressful losing a wallet is until I stopped worrying about it. So the headline here is that this thing has Apple Find My built in. I've had that panic moment where you go to check your pocket and your wallet is gone. So with this, you can name it, track its location, share it with someone, and if it's nearby, it plays a 70 decibel sound so you can actually find it. It's the only third-party trackable wallet you can actually buy through Apple.com, which says a lot. Design-wise, it's a 1/4 inch thin. That's thinner than any trackable wallet on the market. You snap it on via MagSafe, and the magnetic hold is strong. 50 newtons to be exact. I've been shaking this thing around and it stays locked in. It unfolds into 3 stand positions. Portrait mode is great for video calls, landscape is great for watching stuff, and this floating mode, which I've been using as a second screen next to my laptop. It's kind of perfect for notifications and messages coming in while you're working. And when it's folded out, it doubles down as a grip, making your iPhone way more secure in your hand. It holds up to 2 cards. I've got my ID and my credit card in here, which is all I really carry around anymore. And the crazy thing is, it charges wirelessly. And and one charge can last up to 6 months. You can also check the remaining battery right from your phone. The material is actually vegan leather that feels premium, and it's right now available on apple.com and moft.us. If you're already invested in the Apple ecosystem, this just makes a whole lot of sense. Now, the iPhone 17's cameras is one of those situations where the more you use it, the more nuanced your opinion becomes. Now, don't get me wrong, on the surface, it's very good. Daylight photos look clean, colors are accurate without being overcooked, and the dynamic range is solid enough that you rarely feel the need to adjust anything before hitting the shutter. This is the kind of camera you can hand to anyone and trust that they'll get a usable shot almost every time. Now, low light performance is another area where Apple continues to play it safe but effective. Nighttime photos come out bright without completely blowing out the highlights, and the noise is kept under control. For most people, this is more than enough. You take the photo, you move on, and you don't think about it again, which honestly is what Apple optimizes for. But if you're more of a camera enthusiast like me, I do have some criticism. One of my most common complaints is the sharpness, particularly around the edges of photos. Some shots, especially close-up or images with a lot of detail, can look a little bit soft, almost like the processing is doing too much smoothing. It's not something you'll notice in every photo, but once you see it, it's hard to unsee. There's also something about focus consistency. In tricky lighting, I've noticed that the camera's hunting for focus or briefly stuttering in the viewfinder before the photo is taken. Now, these aren't really deal breakers, but they do make the camera feel less polished than you'd expect at this point. And for people who used to rely on certain shooting modes together, like portrait and night mode, some recent software changes have taken that flexibility away rather than adding to it. So the iPhone 17's cameras aren't bad, it's far from it. It's dependable, it's consistent, and it produces photos that look great on social media and everyday use. But if you're someone who really cares about the technical sharpness, edge details, or having full creative control, this might feel more like a refinement than real progress. Now, of course, when it comes to video, this is where the iPhone 17 really reminds you why so many creators still default to the iPhone. Video quality is rock solid across the board. The footage looks sharp without being overly processed, colors stay consistent between the lenses, and the dynamic range holds up in mixed lighting scenarios. You can quite literally pull out the phone, hit record, and trust that what you're getting is going to be usable without too much thought. Stabilization continues to be one of the strongest parts of the experience. Handheld walking shots look smooth without feeling artificially floaty, and panning shots don't introduce weird jitters or frame drops. This makes the iPhone 17 especially good for quick clips, vlogs, or social content where you don't have time to set up anything properly. That said, some of the same critiques from the photo side carry over here as well. In lower lighting, processing can be a little bit aggressive, especially when the phone is trying to keep the exposure stable. Highlights are controlled well, but fine detail can soften more than some people would like. It still looks good, just not always class leading if you are pixel peeping. Overall though, video on the iPhone 17 is dependable, it's consistent, and creator friendly. It's not pushing boundaries, but it really doesn't need to. This is a video camera you can trust, and for a lot of people that matters more than anything else. Now, one of the first things I've noticed about the iPhone 17 is how perfectly sized feels in the hand. I've always felt like carrying anything much bigger feels like you're carrying a tiny tablet, and at 6.3 inches this hits a real sweet spot that works for most people. It's roomy enough for content and gaming, yet not so big that one-handed use becomes a stretch. That balance makes everyday tasks like scrolling, texting, and navigating feel effortless rather than comfortable. Design-wise, the iPhone 17 doesn't really reinvent the wheel, but that's a part of the story. A lot of people online have pointed out that from a distance it looks very familiar, almost identical to last year's model, which some may see as boring, but others see as timeless. The flat edges, frosted glass back, and dynamic island cutouts are still unmistakably iPhone. And there's something reassuring about a design that feels tried and true rather than trendy. Apple has also made some less obvious refinements that matter in day-to-day use. The frame's durability feels solid, and with improved scratch resistant on the ceramic shield front, it's built to handle bumps and slips that happen to everyday devices. So while the iPhone 17 won't turn heads for radical design changes, its comfort, build quality, and functional styling make it a phone that feels good to use and hold. And that matters more than something flashy when you're living with it every single day. The display on the iPhone 17 is one of those upgrades that doesn't jump out to you in a spec sheet, but you feel it immediately the moment you start using this phone. The addition of a 120Hz ProMotion display on the base model changes the entire experience. Scrolling feels smoother, animations feel more natural, and everything just looks more fluid without calling attention to itself. And once you've used it for a bit, there is no going back to 60Hz. Honestly, 60Hz feels outdated. What I like most is that it doesn't feel like a feature you have to think about. You're not toggling settings or hunting for moments where it shines. It just quietly makes the phone feel faster and more responsive in everyday use. Whether you're swiping through social apps, browsing the web, or switching between apps, it's subtle. But it's also one of those upgrades that becomes hard to give up. The panel itself is excellent. The the colors are accurate, the contrast is strong, and the brightness is more than enough for outdoor use. Watching videos, editing photos, or even just reading text still feels sharp and comfortable for long sessions. And because Pro Motion is adaptive, it also plays nicely with the battery life rather than constantly running at full refresh. This isn't a flashy display meant to impress in a demo. It's a display that improves everything you do all the time. And that to me is what makes it such a meaningful upgrade. So who is the iPhone 17 actually for? This is the phone for people who want the iPhone experience at its most refined. If you care about things working smoothly, consistently, and predictably every single day, this is the phone that makes a lot of sense. It doesn't ask you to adapt your habits or learn a new workflow. You just pick it up and you use it. It's especially well suited for people upgrading from older iPhones. Anything from a 12, 13, or earlier, where the jump in the display smoothness, performance efficiency, and the overall polish will feel meaningful. The addition of a 120Hz display alone makes everyday interactions feel more modern. And when you combine that with the solid battery life and reliable cameras, it becomes an easy recommendation for most people. This is also a great option for people who don't want a large phone. The size hits that sweet spot, where it's comfortable to hold, easy to use one-handed, and still big enough to enjoy content without compromise. Who it's not for are for the spec chasers or for people looking for dramatic innovation. If you want experimental features, extreme zoom, or cutting-edge hardware flexes, you'll probably be looking elsewhere. But if you want a phone that gets everything right and doesn't get in your way, the iPhone 17 fits that role almost perfectly. So after using the iPhone 17 for well over 100 days, my takeaway is simple. This is one of the easiest phones to live with that Apple has ever made. Nothing stands out in a flashy way, nothing really gets in your way, the performance is consistent, the battery life is predictable, the display makes every interaction feel smoother, and the camera is reliable enough that you stop thinking about it altogether. It's not exciting, and it doesn't try to be, but as a daily phone, that might actually be its biggest strength. As always, if you guys made it to the end of this video, drop a dolphin emoji down in the comments below. I would love to know who my true supporters are. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to flex with your iPhone 17 tech.